The house was too quiet. It had been that way for 3 months, ever since the day the police chief and the chaplain came to the door. The little girl felt the quiet like a heavy blanket. Before, the house was filled with her dad's loud laugh, the sound of his boots on the floor, and the deep, rumbling voice he used to tell her stories. Now, there was just the soft clicking of the kitchen clock. She sat at the old wooden table, a serious look on her 9-year-old face. In front of her was her piggy bank, a smiling ceramic cat. She turned it upside down, and a waterfall of coins clattered onto the table. There were pennies, nickels, dimes, and a few quarters. Carefully, she started making stacks. A pile for 10 cents, a pile for 20-5. Her mother watched from the sink, a dish towel moving slowly over a plate that was already dry. Her eyes were on her daughter, filled with a love so big it hurt. She saw the girl's brow furrowed in concentration, her small fingers sorting the copper and silver. She didn't ask what the money was for. These days, her daughter had little projects. A drawing for her father's memory box, planting flowers in his favorite spot in the garden. This was another one, and if counting coins brought a moment of peace, then she would let it be. The back door opened, letting in a slice of cool afternoon air. It was the dad's old partner from the police force. He still came by every week, just to check in. He tried to smile when he saw the little girl, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. His own eyes were tired double quotes. "Hey, kiddo," he said, his voice softer than his big frame suggested. "What's all this? Buying a spaceship?" The girl just shook her head, focused on her task. "It's $62, she said, not looking up. "And 38 cents. The officer shared a glance with the mother. He took a slow breath, pulling out a chair to sit at the table. I need to talk to you both about something." "About Rex?" At the sound of the dog's name, the girl's head snapped up. Her eyes, wide and hopeful, locked onto his. Rex was her dad's partner. A big, serious German shepherd, with fur like a storm cloud and eyes that saw everything. She hadn't seen him since the funeral, where he sat perfectly still, his leash held by another officer, watching the flag being folded. "What about Rex?" the mother asked, putting the plate away and coming to sit down. The officer's big hands fidgeted on the table. "The department. They've decided he's going to be retired. He's getting older, and after what happened, well, it's time. They're going to sell him." "Sell him?" the mother whispered, her hand going to her mouth. "It's policy," the officer said, his voice full of apology. "He's department property. They auction off vehicles, old equipment, and retired K-9 South. It's in 2 weeks. The money goes back into the K-9 unit fund." "But can't we?" the mother started, her voice trembling. "Can't we just take him? He was family." The officer looked down. "I tried. I pushed for it. But Sarah, he's a highly trained police dog. They're worried. He needs a specific kind of handler, someone who knows the commands, the signals. It's for everyone's safety, including his. And the starting bid, it's more than I think either of us could manage right now." The little girl had stopped listening to the reasons. Her whole world had narrowed to one shining fact. Rex needed a home. Her dad's dog. Her friend. The one who would sit patiently while she carefully brushed his thick fur, who would nudge her hand with his cold nose when she was sad. That night, the house was quiet again. The girl lay in bed, but she wasn't sleeping. She could hear the low murmur of her mother's voice on the phone in the kitchen. She slipped out of bed and tiptoed to her door, pressing her ear to the cool wood. I know it's terrible," her mother was saying, her voice thick with held-back tears. "But what can I do? We can't afford to bid thousands of dollars on a dog, no matter how much we love him." The medical bills, everything. It's just impossible. The girl crept back to her bed. Her heart felt like a tiny, trapped bird beating against her ribs. Impossible. Grown-ups were always saying that word. But she remembered her dad's voice, clear as if he was sitting right next to her. It was a memory from a perfect Saturday, her dad on the floor with Rex, showing her how to give the dog a special treat. "You listen to me, my brave girl," he had said, his arm around her shoulders. "This big guy and I, we look out for each other. That's what partners do. And if I'm ever not here, you have to be his partner for me. You understand? You look after him. He'll look after you. That's a promise." It wasn't just something nice, he said. It was a job. Her job. And she hadn't been doing it. She got out of bed again and went to her dresser. In the top drawer, under her socks, was her dad's old watch. It didn't work anymore. The glass was cracked, and the hands were stuck. But he wore it every day. She held it in her palm, feeling its cold, heavy weight. She walked back to her desk and placed it gently on top of the neat stacks of coins. She looked at her money. $62.38. And one watch dot, it wasn't enough. She knew that now. The man had said thousands of dollars. Her pile was small. But a plan, tiny and fragile, began to form in her mind. If she didn't have enough money, she would have to make more. She had 2 weeks. She had to try. For her dad. For Rex. For the promise she was only now understanding she had to keep. The quiet in the house was no longer just empty. It was a space she needed to fill with action. The next morning, the little girl got to work. She didn't ask for permission. She knew what grown-ups would say. They would talk about being realistic. They would use that word again. Impossible. So she just started doing. She found an old folding table in the garage, the one her dad used for yard sales. It was heavy, but she dragged it, bumping and scraping, to the very end of their driveway, right where the concrete met the street. Next came a chair. Then the important part. She took a big piece of cardboard from a packing box, and, with her best markers, she wrote in big, clear letters, **** lemonade for a hero dog. **** 50 CENTS. ***. She drew a careful picture of a German shepherd in the corner. It looked a little more like a wolf, but the point was there. Her first customer was the mailman. He read the sign, his smile fading into something softer. "Is this for your dad's partner?" he asked quietly. The girl just nodded, pouring lemonade from a big plastic pitcher into a paper cup. Her hands shook a little, making the ice cubes clink. He paid with $1 and told her to keep the change. Word travels fast on a quiet street. Soon, neighbors started coming. The elderly woman from 2 doors down, who always waved, walked slowly up the driveway with her cane. She bought 2 cups, one for now and one for later, she said, her old eyes kind. The man who jogged every afternoon stopped, breathing hard, and pulled a $5 bill from his pocket. "For the cause," he said, and didn't take any lemonade at all, Dot. The girl's best friend from down the street saw the stand and ran home. She came back with a container of chocolate chip cookies her mom had just baked. "We can sell these too," she said. So the sign was updated. **** lemonade and cookies. ******** for Rex the police dog. *****. The little pile of money in the old coffee can began to grow. But it grew slowly. Quarters and dollar bills. After 3 hours in the sun, the girl unrolled the cash and counted. She had made $19.50. She added it to her piggy bank money. Now she had $81.88. A lot of money to her. Not enough for a hero dog, She saw the police car turn onto the street before she heard it. It rolled to a stop right in front of her table. Her dad's old partner got out. He didn't look angry, just deeply, deeply tired. He walked over and put a $10 bill in the can. He didn't ask for a drink. "Kiddo," he said, leaning down so he was closer to her height. "We need to talk about this." Her friend suddenly found a very interesting bug on the ground to look at. The girl just stared back at him, her chin set. "This auction. It's not like a store. The people who go there, they're from other towns, other counties. Security companies. They need dogs who can still work. They're going to bid a lot of money. More than you or I have. My dad said I have to look after him," she said, her voice small but firm. The officer's face softened. "I know he loved that dog, and I know you love him. But looking after him might mean letting him go to someone who can give him the job he needs. Rex is trained to work. It's all he knows." The girl looked down at her drawing of the dog on the sign. "He knows me," she whispered at the officer's side, a sound full of the world's weight. "Can I tell you a story? About your dad and Rex?" She nodded. "It was last winter. Really late at night, freezing cold. We got a call about a man who was lost and confused in the big park. Could have frozen to death. We searched for hours. Nothing. Your dad," he was about to call it. Then he looked at Rex, and he did this. This thing. He never really told me what it was. But he got real quiet, and he put his hand on Rex's head, and he just focused. And Rex changed. He took off like a shot on a new path. We found the man 10 minutes later, curled up under some bushes. Rex saved that man's life. That bond, that focus, that's what they're looking for in a new handler. That's why it costs so much." The girl listened. But in her mind, she wasn't thinking about the cold park or the lost man. She was remembering a hot afternoon in their own backyard. Her dad was teaching Rex a new command, but the dog was distracted, pacing. Her dad had gotten quiet then, too. He had looked at the girl and given a little smile. Then he did something strange. He hummed. It was a few notes from a song he used to sing to her at bedtime, a tuneless, soft hum. And just like that, Rex had stopped. He sat down, his eyes on her dad, calm and ready. The officer saw her faraway look and mistook it for doubt. "I just don't want you to get your heart broken more than it already is," he said gently. He squeezed her shoulder and got back in his car. The girl watched him drive away. The neighbor kid went home for dinner. The street got quiet again. Her mother came out and helped her carry the table and the pitcher back inside. She didn't ask about the money. That night, the girl lay in bed. She thought about the officer's story. But she also thought about her story, the backyard story. Her dad hadn't just been teaching Rex a command that day. He had been teaching her. He had shown her the secret. The hum, the quiet signal. "You have to be his partner for me." He had said the grown-ups were all wrong. They thought Rex only knew how to work. But she knew what Rex really knew. He knew her dad's secret song. And now she was the only other person in the whole world who knew it too. She didn't just need enough money to buy a dog. She needed to get to that auction. She needed to get close enough to remind Rex who she was. The money was just the ticket to get her in the door. The real plan was the song. The morning of the auction felt different. The air was colder, and the sky was a flat, pale gray. The little girl put on her best dress, the blue one with the small white flowers. It felt like something you should wear for an important day, even if the day was scary. Her mother helped her straighten the collar, her fingers lingering for a second. She didn't say anything, just kissed the top of her daughter's head. The look in her eyes was a mix of love, grief, and a worry so deep It was like a shadow. They drove to a place the girl had never seen before. It wasn't a real auction house. It was just a big, empty parking lot behind the town's public works building. It was a place for selling things the city didn't need anymore. Old trucks with rusted doors sat in a line. Piles of worn-out office chairs and filing cabinets were stacked on the asphalt. It felt cold and official, not like a place for a member of the family. People stood in small groups, talking in low voices. They were mostly men in heavy jackets or uniforms from other towns. They looked at clipboards and papers. The girl held her mother's hand tightly. In her other hand, she clutched a small, zippered purse. Inside was $94.17. The lemonade stand money, plus every last cent from the back of the couch and the bottom of her mother's car. Her dad's old partner saw them and walked over. He tried to smile at the girl, but it looked more like a wince. "They're going to bring him out soon," he said quietly to the mother. "Just be ready, okay?" A man with a loud voice stood on the back of a pickup truck. He started calling out numbers and words that moved too fast for the girl to understand. A rusty tractor sold. A pallet of traffic cones sold. The girl's legs began to feel tired from standing, and the cold from the concrete seeped through her shoes. Then everything changed. Two police officers walked a dog from behind a building. It was Rex. He looked bigger than she remembered and harder. His black and tan fur was thick, and he walked with a powerful, stiff-legged gait. He wasn't pulling on the leash. He was just moving. His ears were up, his eyes scanning the crowd, but they didn't seem to see anyone. They looked empty. He didn't look like her friend who nudged her hand for treats. He looked like a tool, a piece of equipment waiting to be handed to its next user. A lump formed in the girl's throat. This wasn't the dog from her backyard. This was the dog from the cold park in the officer's story. The man with the loud voice started talking. Lot number 47, a fully trained 7-year-old German Shepherd Police K9, retired from active duty. Proven tracking and apprehension skills. Solid work history. Health clearance. Let's start the bidding at $3,000. The girl's heart dropped right down into her cold shoes. 3,000. Her whole body went numb. She looked up at her mother, whose face had gone pale. Her mother squeezed her hand, a silent message of shared sorrow. A man in a county sheriff's jacket nodded. 3,000. 3,200, said another man in a security company hat. 35. 4,000. The numbers flew back and forth, sharp and quick. They weren't numbers for a dog. They were numbers for a machine. A useful machine. The bids climbed past what her father's car was probably worth. Past $5,000. The girl's breath came in little puffs in the cold air. Her plan, her secret song, it felt silly now. A stupid baby's dream. These men with their serious faces and big voices, they would never let her get close. Rex was a thing to them, and things went to the highest number. The officer beside them put a heavy hand on the mother's shoulder. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I really am." The bidding was between two men now. The security company owner and a trainer from another state. 6,000, a security man said, his voice firm. 6,200, the trainer countered. 6,500. There was a pause. The trainer shook his head, looking at Rex with a calculating eye, and then turned away. The security man gave a small, satisfied nod. The man on the truck raised his voice. Going once at 6,500. Going twice. This was it. They were going to take him. He would disappear into a kennel, into a different police car, with a stranger who didn't know the secret song. The quiet promise her dad had whispered would be broken forever. A feeling, hot and desperate, shot through the girl. It was stronger than fear, stronger than the cold. Before her mind could catch up, her body moved. She dropped her mother's hand. She didn't run, but she walked quickly, weaving through the legs of the crowd toward the front. Her little purse dangled from her wrist dot as the auctioneer opened his mouth for the final sold. A clear, high voice cut through the cold air. $89.50. The sound was so small, so completely wrong in this world of big men and bigger numbers, that everything stopped. The auctioneer's mouth hung open. The security man frowned, looking around. All the faces, one by one, turned to look down. There she stood, in her blue flower dress, her face flushed. She was looking right at the auctioneer, her small body trembling, but her chin held high. A ripple of confused murmurs went through the crowd. Someone let out a soft, sad chuckle. The auctioneer recovered, his face softening for just a second. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. The bid is much higher than that. You're too late." The finality in his voice broke the spell. The security man started walking forward, pulling out his wallet, ready to finish the business. The girl didn't look at him. Her eyes were only for Rex. He was still standing with the police officer, his back to her. He hadn't moved. He hadn't heard her. He was already gone. The man with the loud voice cleared his throat. "Sold to the gentleman for $6,500. Lot 47 is concluded." The words were a door slamming shut. The girl just stood there, the cold finally reaching all the way to her bones. The money in her purse was just paper and metal now. It meant nothing. Her plan had been a story she told herself to get through the week. And now the story was over. The sound of the auctioneer's sold seemed to echo in the cold air. The little girl watched frozen as the security man walked toward the police officer holding Rex's leash. The man had a businesslike look on his face, already thinking about the drive back, about where the dog would be kept. This was just a transaction that was over. The girl's mother rushed forward, wrapping her arms around her daughter's shoulders, pulling her close. "I'm so sorry, baby. I'm so sorry." Her voice was a broken whisper in the girl's ear, but the girl wasn't crying. She was just staring at Rex's back. He was standing so still, a statue of a dog. He hadn't even looked her way when she shouted her bid. He didn't know she was here. He didn't know that the last piece of his old life was standing 20 feet away, watching him leave. The security man reached for the leash. The police officer holding it, a young man the girl didn't know, started to hand it over. And then Rex moved out. It wasn't a big movement at first. His head turned, just a little. His nose twitched, sniffing at the cold, diesel-scented air. Then he turned his whole head, his ears swiveling like radar dishes. He was looking away from the new owner, back, scanning the crowd behind him. The security man frowned. "Come on, boy," he said in a firm, commanding voice, the kind meant for working dogs. He gave a short tug on the leash. Rex ignored him completely. He took a step backward, against the pressure of the leash, his eyes still searching the faces. A low sound came from his chest. Not a growl. A whine. A confused, questioning whine that seemed so out of place coming from such a powerful animal. "Hey," the security man said, his voice sharper now. He pulled the leash again. This time Rex resisted. He planted his feet, his muscles taut. He let out another whine, louder, more distressed. His gaze swept past the police officer, past her dad's old partner, and then it stopped. It landed on the little girl in the blue dress. For a second, nothing happened. The dog and the girl just looked at each other across the cold, gray space. Then Rex lunged out. It wasn't an attack. It was a pull. He surged forward, not toward the security man, but sideways, straining toward the girl. The police officer holding the leash was caught off guard, stumbling a step. "Whoa, Easy. Rex, heel. He commanded, using the official police voice. Rex didn't heel. The command that had ruled his life for 7 years meant nothing. He was focused on one thing only. The whining was constant now, a pitiful, urgent sound that made the hair on people's arms stand up. The girl's mother held her tighter, afraid of the big, straining animal. But the girl didn't feel afraid. She felt a spark, a tiny, wild hope. He saw her. He knew her. The security man stepped in, trying to block Rex's line of sight. "Control your dog, officer," he snapped. The scene had become a quiet, tense drama in the middle of the parking lot. The other auction goers watched, completely silent. The auctioneer had stopped talking. All the noise of the world had faded away, leaving only the sound of Rex's pleading whines and the scrape of his claws on the asphalt as he pulled. The girl knew this was her only chance. The last chance. Grown-ups were about to take over. They would manhandle him into a truck, and that would be that. She had to do the thing she came here to do. Not the money. The other part. The secret part. Slowly, gently, she wriggled out of her mother's grasp. Her mother whispered, "Honey, no, stay here." But the girl took a small step forward. Then another. She wasn't walking toward the dog the way you might walk toward a friendly pet. She moved slowly, carefully. She didn't call his name. Names were commands, and commands were what the policemen were shouting. She didn't want to be another person giving him orders. Instead, she did something that made everyone watching hold their breath. She sat down, right there on the dirty, cold asphalt of the parking lot. She crossed her legs. She made herself small. She bowed her head, looking down at her own lap, showing the top of her head. It was a posture of complete vulnerability, of no threat at all. A murmur went through the crowd. The security man looked baffled. The police officer holding the leash stopped pulling, mesmerized by this strange little girl. Rex stopped straining. He was still tense, still focused on her, but the frantic whining ceased. He was watching, waiting. Then the girl began to hum dot. It was soft at first, almost lost in the wind. Just a few wavering notes. Then it grew a little stronger. It was a simple tune. A bedtime song. A song her father used to sing when she had nightmares, when a storm was too loud or when the world felt too big. It was the same tune she had heard him hum to Rex on that hot, distracted afternoon. She didn't look up. She just sat on the ground, humming her father's song to the cold sky. The effect on Rex was instant, and it was like watching ice melt out. The stiffness drained from his body. The intense, working dog focus in his eyes softened, then clouded with something else. Memory. His tall, pointed ears, which had been pinned forward in alertness, relaxed. He let out a huge, shuddering sigh, a sound that seemed to come from the very bottom of his soul. Then he moved. Not a lunge. A walk. A slow, deliberate walk. He padded the few steps over to her, his leash trailing. He ignored the security man, the police officer, everyone. He came right up to her bowed figure. He lowered his great, wolf-like head, and he rested it gently in her lap. He closed his eyes. Another deep sigh shook his frame. For the first time since his partner had died, the dog was still. He was home. A single choked sob broke the silence. It came from her dad's old partner. He was staring, his hand over his mouth, his eyes shining. He looked from the girl to the dog and back again, and in that moment he understood everything. He stepped forward, his voice thick with emotion, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's it," he said, pointing a trembling finger at the girl and the dog. "That's the signal. That's the real signal. Her father used it. Only him. I saw him do it once, after a bad call, to calm him down. He never told me what it was. He must have." He must have taught it to her. He looked at the police chief, who had walked over, his face unreadable. "Sir," the old partner said, his voice breaking, "that's not a piece of equipment. That's his daughter. And he just came home." The silence in the parking lot was total. It wasn't the quiet of before, full of coughs and shifting feet. This was a deep, stunned silence. Every person was watching the little girl sitting on the ground, her father's huge dog resting its head in her lap as if it was the softest pillow in the world. The humming had stopped, but the feeling of it hung in the air. The security man was the first to move. He let out a long breath, one he seemed to have been holding forever. He looked at the dog, now peaceful, and then at the girl's small hands gently stroking the fur between Rex's ears. The businesslike look on his face was gone. In its place was something softer, more tired, more human. He walked over, not to the police officer with the leash, but to the girl's mother. He spoke in a low voice. "Ma'am," he said, "I run a company that protects people. But some things—" He glanced back at the pair on the ground. "Some things don't need protecting. They just need to be left together." He reached into his jacket pocket, took out his wallet, and then walked to the auctioneer. They spoke for a moment. The auctioneer, an older man with a weathered face, nodded slowly, his eyes never leaving the scene. The security man came back and simply said, "The sale is void." "It's not right." The crowd seemed to exhale all at once. There were nods. A few people wiped their eyes quickly with their sleeves. The police officer holding the leash let it drop from his hand, leaving it lying on the ground. It was no longer needed, but the story wasn't over. The girl had her dog's head in her lap, but he wasn't hers. Not officially. He was still a number on a city inventory sheet. The police chief, a tall man with silver in his hair, stepped into the empty space. He looked at his officer, the girl's dad's partner. "You're sure?" he asked, his voice quiet but carrying. 100%, sir," the officer said, his voice firm now. "That was their private signal. I'd bet my badge on it. The dog wasn't disobeying. He was obeying a higher command. He was coming home." The chief nodded. He walked over and crouched down, a few feet from the girl and the dog. He didn't get too close. He spoke gently. "Honey, can you look at me for a second?" The girl lifted her head. Her eyes were wide, a little scared of this important man. "That song you were humming," the chief said. "Can you tell me? Did your dad teach you that? For Rex?" She nodded, her fingers still moving in the dog's fur. "For when he was too loud in his head," she whispered, repeating words her father had used. "To tell him it was safe." The chief closed his eyes for a brief second, as if hearing a ghost. When he opened them, he stood up and addressed everyone. "Policy is written for the normal times. This," he gestured to them, "this is not a normal time. This dog's service is over. His final duty is right here." He turned to the auctioneer. "What's the city's minimum bid for surplus property?" The old man checked his clipboard. $1, chief." The chief took a single, crisp dollar bill from his own wallet. He walked to the girl's mother and pressed it into her hand. "The city accepts your bid of $1 for the retired K-9 unit. The paperwork will be processed by end of day." He then looked at the girl. "You take good care of your partner, okay? He's earned his rest." A sound started then. It wasn't loud. It was a single person, clapping. Then another, and another. Soon, the whole small crowd in that cold parking lot was applauding. Not a wild cheer, but a warm, steady, respectful sound. It was a sound of agreement, of a community seeing something right happen in front of them. The girl finally stood up. Her legs were stiff from the cold ground. Rex stood up with her, his body pressing close against her side, a solid, warm wall. Her mother rushed over, crying freely now, but they were happy tears. She hugged her daughter, and then, tentatively, she rested a hand on Rex's back. He leaned into the touch. The drive home was different. The car wasn't quiet. It was full of the sound of a dog's contented breathing from the back seat. The girl sat beside him, her arm over his neck. He would occasionally turn and nudge her cheek with his cold nose. A familiar gesture she hadn't felt in months. When they pulled into their driveway, the sun had broken through the gray clouds, casting a weak, golden light. Rex jumped out and stood for a moment, sniffing the air of his old home. He recognized the smells of the garden, the tree he used to lie under, the grill where his old partner would sometimes sneak him a piece of hamburger dot. He followed the girl to the front door and walked inside without hesitation. He padded through the living room, his nails clicking on the floor, and went straight to the corner where his old bed still was, washed and waiting. He turned in a circle 3 times and settled down with a groan of pure comfort. That night, the house had a new sound. The sound of a dog sighing in his sleep from the floor beside the girl's bed. The girl wasn't staring at the ceiling. She was asleep, one hand dangling off the side of the mattress, her fingertips just brushing Rex's fur. Down the hall, her mother stood in the doorway, watching them. The deep, constant worry that had lined her face for months was still there, but it was softer now. It had been joined by something else, a fragile peace. The man they loved was gone, and that ache would never leave. But he had left behind a protector, a living piece of his love, to watch over their little pack. And he had left a brave girl who knew that some promises are worth everything, even sitting on cold asphalt and humming a secret song to the wind. The promise had been kept. The family, though changed forever, was whole again.